Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. This is Bottom of the Beaker, the weekly show about the design, ducks, and strategy of everyone's favorite unique deck game, Keyforge. I'm JT Russell, and with me tonight, my co-host, is a man who his wife gets kind of a panicked look in the eye whenever she hears the first notes of the 12 days of Christmas, because we all know how many days are in his advent calendar. I am, of course, talking about Quick Draw 3457. Howdy, Quick Draw. How you doing this evening?
Hey, it is good to be here again. How are you, JT?
I'm doing great. And we are not alone in the lab. We have a very special guest, a guest I am honored to welcome. Who we got with us, Quick Draw?
We have the legendary xoque, aka DataForge Stream, with us this week. Welcome, xoque. Thanks for coming on this week.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be here. Huge fan of the show, so I'm excited.
I love to hear that, and I truly, I don't just say this, but I truly cannot believe it took us 64 episodes to get you here.
What are you doing? Sounds sloppy to me.
We are staying sloppy, is what we're doing exactly. So.
A lot of arm twisting. He resisted for a long time. Like, you guys, yeah. I don't know.
We've been inviting you for like a year now. I mean. Anyway, thank you for being here. You have a lot of awesome ideas, even though you have a stream of your own, and you continue to have amazing ideas to talk about. So we're really excited that you're here. And we're going to talk about, well, I'll let you introduce it. xoque, what would you like to talk about this week with us?
Yeah, thanks. We're going to be talking about Winds of Exchange, kind of looking back. It's been a while for at least kind of the majority of the Keyforge world that Winds of Exchange has been out. And so I thought it'd be interesting to kind of do a retrospective and say, what do we think about Winds of Exchange? How is it done in competitive scene? How do people feel about it? What's going to be its legacy? Is it important? Just see kind of what's up with this whole Winds of Exchange thing.
JT has been trying to twist my arm into a debate for like the entire season, and I'm like, I don't know how well I'm going to do in a debate. But you guys managed to team up and wrote me into this one. We're going to have a nice, lively conversation, I think, about this one.
The chat is already chomping for the Quick Draw rant that's brewing.
Yes, the Quick Draw rant and rive.
The rant and rive.
I've been hearing it all day, so I'm ready.
He's fired up. We all have a drink to get through this evening for one reason or another.
Hey.
I needed this one to get through this one.
Skull.
Cheers.
And in
Skull.
And in honor of DataForge Stream. And by the way, we should really mention for the no people who are here and don't know where to find xoque on the internet, right? Twitch.tv/DataForge Stream. Same handle on YouTube. Am I right in remembering that, xoque?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, cool. Also, you have a home base over on the ABR server. And do lots of other things. Am I missing anything? Any fancy spots?
You got it all.
All right.
I'm xoque on Discord. You can find me.
There you go. Yeah. So what are we drinking in honor of having xoque on the show this evening? I'll get started. I was between two options, and I promised I'd explain my dilemma to you all when we were just deciding before. So I went with actually very light pour of a bullet bourbon with ginger ale. I do love whiskey ginger ales. You may notice, longtime folks who take note of such things, that I have a different background than before. So there's a little bit of backstory here, but way back in April, I suffered a hydrophilic attack on the day that I was to fight in the NKFL hydrophilic attack. Also, my kitchen flooded, and I am just now getting it repaired, and so I'm in temporary housing, as it were, and I am without my typical accoutrements, as it were. So I have a nice bottle of Blanton's that I just received as a gift yesterday, but I have an open bottle of Blanton's at home, and I was like, do I crack open this one, or do I just finish off the remains of this bullet? And so that's what I went with. But I do love Bullet. It's a great bourbon. So you can never be unhappy about that. But that's what I'm drinking: whiskey ginger ale with Bullet bourbon. Yeah.
It's Mind Bullets bourbon, isn't it?
Mind Bullets
Ooh.
bourbon, indeed. We need
Very
to
nice.
do a 12 Days of Christmas rendition with 3 keys of flipping and all that stuff. That would be delightful. But anyway, an aside.
Yes.
What are you drinking this evening, Zoc?
I decided to go local today, so I'm drinking Whiskey Del Back, and this is the kind of original whiskey. But after I finish that, I also have the mesquite smoked one, Dorado, and then we also have the distiller's cut. So I'm ready because I know this is going to be a heated episode.
I'm driving you to drink 3 bottles of whiskey in one night. I have that effect on people sometimes.
Nice.
I am drinking my favorite Black Manhattan. I have Whistle Pig Rye and Averna. I was drinking this when I made a lovely appearance on Zoc Tales earlier this year.
Very nice.
Skull.
Skull. Skull indeed.
All right, so I don't have 3 bottles here. I'm the one that probably needs 3 bottles for this one. But we really want to like kind of go back and look at Woe in retrospect. We had a lot of hot takes when it first came out. I think a lot of the community did. We had a lot of expectations, and things in some ways worked out maybe how we thought, other ways not. And so we're going to take some time to kind of go through, our current thoughts on it now that we've had a lot of time to digest the set. And so there's a few overarching themes that we're going to have here. But Zoc, why don't you kind of start us off here? This is one of your ideas you approached us with, so I'll let you kind of dive into more detail.
Yeah, so kind of the first thing that I was thinking about with Winds of Exchange is obviously this is a first set after the hiatus. The first set from Ghost Galaxy. We hadn't had Keyforge for years, and this is the first set coming back. And this is also the first set where Ghost Galaxy, in theory, is trying to attract, new Keyforge players. So, I wanted to try and dig into what kind of is the importance of Winds of Exchange. What do we think of it as the first step back? What do we think of it in terms of being competitive? And what do we think of it in terms of would this attract new players?
Yeah, there was a poll that you had referenced in the NKFL server, which was put pretty simply. But now that WoW's been out, this poll came out about 2 weeks ago. Looks like maybe 3 weeks ago. Now that WoW's been out for a while and people have had the experience, do you think WoW is a good or bad set for the game of Keyforge? And then it was a good or bad answer, and it was pretty overwhelmingly good. 56-12 was the tally that we have at the last count. So the large majority of people say this was a good thing. I will say that I was one of the 12 that said no. And I will just start by saying that I think this question could be interpreted in different ways. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Zoc, that this was kind of necessary for Ghost Galaxy to like hit the ground running and come out with like a real banger of a set on their first set since taking over. And so in that regard, yeah, I think that was absolutely necessary. I think my answer came mainly from what I feel is the long-term health of the game from this set. And we'll dig into that more later. But I don't know if JT has any other thoughts. You probably agree that this was kind of what Ghost Galaxy needed to do here.
I do. I mean, I think the number one thing that Ghost Galaxy could have done wrong with WoW was have it be boring. And whether or not you think that it was good or bad, it's debatable. But boring would have been a death knell for the game at large, I think. And so not doing that is already a big check mark. I think a little bit of power creep was a good thing because in my mind, telling folks that are interested in getting into the game as a competitive player, like, hey, you don't have to necessarily go and track down mass mutations or first print run coda to be competitive is kind of a nice message. So being able to say, hey, there's an option. It's the current print run, the newest set. You can pick some of these up and have a decent shot at something that's going to be, Vault Tour worthy is a good place to be for where they're at. And similarly for, folks who are trying to get back into the game, trying to entice them back into the game, right? I think that you don't want it to be like, oh, you left in AOA, you missed Worlds Collide and Mass Mutations. Sorry, you're just going to have to struggle to compete if you really want to get back into it. There's a lot you have to catch up on. So I think it provided a way for people to get in or get back in without feeling there was a lot of catch up to do in terms of building a collection. And I also think it just gave us a lot of stuff to talk about. It was absolutely not boring, and that was like the number one most important thing for it to have done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely proven its competitiveness as well, and which, I mean, you mentioned it, a little bit of power creep I think is needed. Kind of getting back into sets, and Fudginator asked in the chat how many new players actually got their hands on this set, and it's a good question. I think sure there's probably questions on how Ghost Galaxy went about marketing it or whatever, but if they go to those stores that ordered the latest, then they can get this. And so I think it's still what people, if they wanted to get into Keyforge right now, that this is what they would be looking for. And I think the competitive results that we saw kind of in this OP season were pretty interesting, because we saw the competitiveness of WoW, but we also saw other sets still being competitive as well.
Yeah, it didn't eliminate the relevance of the older sets. We can talk into more like of the stats we have here compiled for competitiveness in a bit. I want to go back to one of your other questions, Ozak, is like, do we think this really brought in new players? Or maybe like a different way to frame it is not just the competitive players, but do you think this is a good set for new or returning casual players as well?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think from a casual perspective, probably everybody has a different feel for what they're looking for. Like for example, for me, I do like to teach new players with Coda. Like I think it's a very elegant, that you don't have really complicated board states, and being able to teach it, it's kind of elegance. It's easy to understand. But some people, I've heard this complaint from some people that they don't like Coda because it's too simple. They actually like the complexity, the complex board states from either Worlds Collide or DT. And for those people, Winds of Exchange would be, I think, you get some pretty complex board states going on. So, I think it depends. If I'm thinking about casual, I have friends that I get together and we play casually. None of them are in online leagues. I did rope one into kind of Coat back in the day, but um, yeah, they seem to enjoy it. They just seem to like new Keyforge, and they like the new ideas. And they're not as worried about probably what could be super competitive and super broken. They just were looking to have a fun time, and for them, Winds of Exchange is providing that.
Yeah, I can say that like I still have a great time playing it with my locals at a casual level. Like we play sealed. You're not looking for something hyper competitive. You're not worried about like, what is the long term health of the game for a deck like this. You're just playing sealed, and it's great for that. I also think that the way you were describing like certain people like more complexity than others. I always like to use the example of my brother. He's a big gamer. He loves board games. He loves very complex strategic board games, and he was never really sucked into Keyforge. And I think he played a little bit during Coda and AOA, and he just didn't really like hook him. And I think a player like him would not respond well to a set that was not complex, and he might maybe enjoy something like this a bit more. So I totally understand. There are different types of players. Some might like this more complex stuff, some might not. And if you're teaching new people, you really have to understand your audience of like what kind of a gamer they are, and be like, okay, this person maybe they want to start with like Coder AOA. This person probably like DT or Winds of Exchange.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So, should we jump into some of the competitive results just to see like how has Winds of Exchange done this year?
Yeah.
Has it been important in the OP scene?
Yeah, sure.
I think we
And
all know it has.
we know
Yeah.
we know ahead.
It certainly has.
But you did some legwork pulling some of the stats forward. I don't know if I could do a great job of showing it here. I'll just pull up a little quick screenshot of the stats.
While you're doing that, Cloggin has a few questions. How will people know how to buy the product? If their local game store doesn't have it, then they probably won't. I don't think there's been a
Yeah.
lot of advertising. There was some of the Game Found, on BGG, but after that, they probably don't.
Yeah.
And are they drawn the WoW because of tokens or because it's the latest set? I would say it's because of the latest set. I don't. They wouldn't know how Keyforge is with or without tokens, probably.
Mm.
Hmm.
And they might think of tokens, from other card games, but they'd probably just be drawn because it's the latest set.
And
Yeah.
when they talk to their friends who are playing Keyforge, it's like, well, what should I get that's going to be most competitive? They're probably going to say whoa right now, and it's pretty good that that happens to be the set that's on the shelves if there is one that's going to be on the shelves. Um, I know thinking about uh, you know my LGS, we have some whoa, but I don't know how. I mean, I still don't think they're terribly excited about really stocking Keyforge, and I think that we're still, as a game, really in a position where we're trying to win back, or we're needing to win back some of the trust and love of the LGSs, right? And it feels like we're taking kind of a ground up approach there. So there's the ground up approach of getting the players excited, building some local evangelists to get the stores back into the fold, but and also coming top down with some higher level organized play. I'm hoping that this year, and this is kind of the messaging that we got at KFC, but this is the year where they're trying to make a play more for those LGSs. So I don't know that we have a great answer to the question from the chat of is there a place where we can say, yeah, this is where you go to buy tokens, where there's going to be somebody working behind a counter who can speak to the product. I'm hoping that's what we see start to really change this year, because I think right now it's still super community driven, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I have the stats pulled up on screen here. You want to run through them? I can run through them either way. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
No worries. So we got,
Yeah.
yeah, go for it, Zoc. Take it
Uh,
away. Take us away.
all right. Well, I mean, they won 2 Vault Tours out of 7, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, 5 in the United States, 1 in Florence, and 1 in China. They won in China, and then they won Dallas. So that's already, I think, pretty impressive. But the number of top cuts that they had, including Worlds and just Vault Tours and Worlds, they had 47% of all the decks in all the top cuts, which I think is also pretty impressive. So it's definitely competitive, and I think we'll get to the question: what's the long term impact of that? From quick draw referenced earlier, but for this set coming back, it showed that okay, you can buy into Winds of Exchange and have a chance. Obviously there's the great anecdote from Philly where Mike Fooney got his deck on Friday and he played it in the Archon tournament and he got top 8 with it, and
Yeah.
it's an awesome deck too. Um, so yeah, you can be competitive. And then the other thing that I thought was really cool is there was actually a lot of diversity in the tokens. I think one thing we had kind of played around with is like, what do we think about tokens now compared to what we thought about tokens, before WoW came out? And I would not have guessed that we would have seen 13 different tokens out of the 28 kind of represented in top cuts. I think that's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah. I think we all probably would have expected at the start to be like all prospectors and berserkers, and they both
Mm-hmm.
had appearances, 5 from prospector, 3 from berserker. But every like the variety that appeared, I think the ability to still have a good deck, even if you did not have the best token, is still real. Like there's still plenty of decks that are viable with, you know, most tokens. There are definitely some decks where you're like, oh man, if only I had a different token, this would be better. Sure, that's going to happen. But decks, we had Skirmisher, Cleric, Squire, Rebel, Diplomat, Strange Shell, Grunt, all with 1 top 8 appearance each. And then like the Defender, Fish, Scholar, Berserker, Prospector, Warrior, like the ones that you kind of expect with multiples. But like there's what is this? You guys said 13 out of tokens represented, so about half. And I think that there are definitely some decks good enough from the other half of the tokens that could make a top 8 out of Voltor, just haven't had the right opportunity. So that's pretty good as far as balance. If we're talking about, you know, not having one token dominate everything, I'd be pretty pleased to say that like half the tokens have made a cut already this year.
Yeah, it's a great stat. I love seeing the diversity. I mean, I guess you can take a couple things away from that. You can either say that there are decks for each of these tokens, or you could say that the token mechanic itself is just inherently very strong. Yes. those are some kind of two different takes. But I mean, I don't know. Thinking about some of my own decks that play with some of these tokens that would not have been in the top tier at the beginning of the season, right? The non-berserker, non-prospector tokens. I mean, I've got trader and cleric decks that I love and think make awesome use of those tokens specifically. And if they had different tokens, it would just not be as good of a deck. Like it's like you really see some of those other tokens shine. And I'm kind of shocked to not see a trader on this list, but maybe that's
I was just going to say the same exact thing. I just did a double take on that list. Like, wait a minute, that's not there because it's a good token.
Yeah,
it is.
And a great question from the chat too. And I don't actually know. Don't know that we have this information. Well, we have this information for some of the VTs. What was the percent of the field that was a given set versus the top 8 appearance? We could pull that up.
Yeah, it went up over time. We don't have it tabulated to give you an answer, but it started out pretty low, like I don't know, somewhere like 12%, and it like was getting more and more. I think by Roseville, it was pretty, or no, Roseville was the second one.
Yeah, Roseville was early. Las Vegas was a pretty late one. I'm just pulling up those numbers here. Las Vegas ended up at like 61% Winds of Exchange.
Yeah, and these ones that we have listed on screen: Philly, Roseville, Seattle, Dallas, Shanghai, Las Vegas, Florence, and then Worlds. That's in chronological order, if I'm not mistaken.
So that is correct.
You do see just that one from Philly, which was the first one, which, I mean, it was available for like a day for the folks who were not at KFC before. Am I thinking about that right? No. It
was more than a day.
It was a few weeks.
Yeah, a few weeks or a month.
The deck was,
but it wasn't
much.
Was
a day before.
I know me personally, I had one Winds of Exchange deck that I considered for Philly, and I just didn't feel like I had enough reps or enough confidence with it. And I think most people probably felt the same way.
Yes.
And of course, Xoque mentioned that one player opened up a Prospector deck on Friday night, decided to play it, made top cut with it. I mean, that can tell you that, like, I don't know, that's a bold play by them. But I think it was interesting to me that like Philly being the first one was so low, and then it gradually went up. Like, I think that's kind of not unexpected, but it's a sign of the set's strength as well.
It is, and I think it was just probably a sign that people wanted to play like their best deck that they hadn't played at a big event, during this whole big old hiatus. So they wanted to play the one that they had all the reps with, and that they haven't had a chance to play in a VT. Cloggin asked, does the geography and timing of the VTs influence it? Well, definitely. I mean, we definitely see, especially in the US, Winds of Exchange getting more impact over time. But you saw in Florence, it only had one top cut, and I think it also had a much less percentage of Winds of Exchange overall in the field. And yeah, that was definitely because, shipping overseas, Winds of Exchange got to Europe a lot later, and other markets even later. I think I've heard of some people still waiting for it. So that definitely affected it a lot.
Yeah.
Florence had about 20% Winds of Exchange, and only one made the top cut. So definitely one of the lower ones after Philly. But yeah, there's some interesting numbers, and it is generally higher, and yeah, the geography impacts it as well. And we all know that Italian decks are the strongest decks anyway, like they don't need Winds of Exchange. So
it's like first print run Coda Italian. Is that even a thing? Because if it is, that's like that's the top tier.
World,
it doesn't.
Right? Like
that's right.
Yeah, that one world.
That's right.
First print run Italian Coda. Yeah.
There you go.
So That's a
and the
fact.
Italian players are the strongest. Also fact. Yes.
Also, yes.
Also fact.
Um, another interesting thing from here is that the token that appeared the most in the top cuts was Warrior with 6, except 4 of those were from the exact same deck.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ooze was a thing.
Ooze is hot stuff right now in the podcast world. Archon's Corner talked about deck ascension, and it largely centered around the discussion of Ooze and how I think, what is it, 4 different players or 5 different players qualified for Worlds with that deck or something like that.
Yeah, I think
Maybe it was 4. I don't remember.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, that deck was just like shared with team members and non-team members, and everyone that took it
And
pretty
then
much made a top cut with it.
it's the only deck qualified for next Worlds already.
That's right. That's right.
Because
Yes.
Ben won the Open
Yeah.
for the
So
monkey.
it's pretty interesting. Another token I would be remiss not to mention here is
We're waiting
my
for
favorite
it.
token. Waiting for it. It did not make any top cuts. The Trooper. I said this before. I was wrong on Trooper. I initially was super down on Trooper and Saurian in general this set, and Trooper, I've seen the power, and Saurian in general. I am not sad to see Saurian like I thought I might be in this set. I feel like Saurian has a pretty good floor. It serves pretty good purpose. It's got some very powerful cards this set. Was wrong about that as well, but Trooper, I think there could be a Trooper top cut deck next year.
I'd love to see it. And yeah, I mean, you're owning it. I remember, doing some studying for this episode, going back to your first impressions, and you were like, oh no, I've opened another Saurian deck. I have all these Saurian decks.
I
I don't
complained
want to open another
about it
Saurian
so
deck.
much. I complained about it every day. Ask JT. He knows. He heard all about it.
But yeah, you're right. Trooper can, I mean, almost all the tokens, what's cool about it is they have some synergies in some lineups, right? And not in every lineup, like you said, but it's really cool to see those decks that have those synergies. Kind of also like Strange Shell with Faith. Um, everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people were saying Strange Shell, it's awful, awful. It's not gonna ever top cut. And then you come out with this crazy deck that it needs a Strange Shell to get back those critical components to it. And then it wins a Vaulter. So yeah, it's cool seeing that every deck can have its day, kind of every token.
Were
Indeed.
there any other surprises that you guys had from the tokens? Anything that you thought would be better than it is, or maybe another one that kind of snuck up on you?
Uh, well, I guess I don't know if it snuck up on us, but I think the Scholar definitely punched a lot harder than we gave it credit for, at least in combination Legionary Trainer. And we have to tip our hat to the Beahawks crew and also to Second Act, John, for kind of leading that bandwagon, at least as far as I'm aware of, for really kind of identifying it. But yeah, I think we were all kind of collectively sleeping on how strong that combination could be.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot of the ones that were on this list that were kind of poo-pooed as things that would tank your deck if you opened it. Like, all right, on to the next one. I mean, things like Rebel, Diplomat, even Cleric, Skirmisher. So, I don't know, Skirmisher I think had some love from the beginning, but like your defenders, no one was jazzed about Defender. It was kind of some vanilla thing, but you
In the right
have to
deck,
look,
it's
in the right
got a lot
deck.
of synergy.
Totally, you have to look
Yeah.
past the token. You'd have to 100% have to look past the token. Yeah.
I was surprised that Grunt didn't have more top cuts because, I've seen a lot of Mars synergies with tokens, and
Mhm.
kind of people thought Grunt, because of its 3 power, was stronger than and kind of putting it in either the top tier or second to top tier. So I was expecting a little bit more Grunt in the top cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's pretty sticky at 3 power. A lot of the ones that made multiple appearances are pretty sticky. The Defender has 2 power and armor. Fish just has 2 power. Berserker with 5, and then the Warrior with 4. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about tokens that you can play and they can actually survive to be used. and that's what the Grunt's got going for it. In addition to the synergies you referenced, like with the psychic network and hypnotic command, that kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, in chat we're kind
Yeah.
of musing at the absence of cadet. I mean, I've been trying to sell a really spicy cadet FOF transponder deck that features a couple copies of Grey Rider, and it's just like, oh man, is rule of sixing those Grey Riders with cadets is super fun and comes out of nowhere. Lots of combo potential. I'm surprised that it's not one that we've seen do it. But they're out there. Those decks are out there. One Star Peeps in the chat has at least one really good, at least one, maybe two. I'm not sure, but I've seen it go off, and like it's like, I don't know, these like stray damage pips in Star Alliance that all of a sudden your cadet is this monster, or Equidon, and like the buggies are going, or the Hings Gross is going. You're like, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Hopefully we'll see it next year. But Cloggin also mentioned Amberline. Yeah, I think Amberline was overrated too.
Yeah.
I have not even seen a good Amberline deck, and
No.
I was kind of excited about it before Winds of Exchange came out. I was like, yeah, there's some cool stuff in there where it could totally go off, but haven't seen it.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I opened a few of them, and I felt like, man, every creature is an amber for you. Like that seems like great value, but you're right, it's just not coming to fruition.
Interesting. Yeah, some ones from the chat mentioned. They're interesting too to see the decks that are good because of their token or despite their token. Zoc, did you have the first Prospector? No, not the first. That was in Philly. But one of the first Prospector decks to top 8. I want to say.
Philly top. There was a trader from Mike Fooney, and then in Roseville it was Janos that
from
Janos borrowed it.
That was from Hobo, I think.
That was oh man, it was a Flaming Hobo. He borrowed it from Zodid and later bought it, but so Flaming Hobo top cut Roseville with it, I believe.
Okay, and then Dallas,
I think
Shanghai.
I remember that one.
Okay, cool. Interesting.
Yeah, the Prospectors have been pretty consistently making appearances, it looks like, from the Voltors.
They're still good. I mean, they were overrated. I think we can probably get a lot of head nods from, 12 head nods from a room of 20 at least, that Prospectors were overrated. But still potent, still strong, still doing
good.
Cool stuff. And you can also play...
I used the Prospector.
Yeah. Great. You can also play great decks that happen to have a Prospector token, but don't make a ton of Prospectors.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did have a Prospector to qualify for Worlds at the Last Chance qualifier. So definitely helped propel me there with a good token like that in Sealed.
Yeah, and my deck is kind of like you were describing, JT. It's a good deck that just happens to have a Prospector, and it can help sometimes, but it's more about kind of all the pips in it and kind of all the other efficiencies. But yeah, I think it was overrated, but I think part of that is SAS, right? I think SAS has a huge influence on how we look at competitive decks, and it highly rated Prospector.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, Quick Draw's favorite Trooper is almost negative.
Yeah,
so
that's the reason why my average SAS in NKFL is the lowest in my group. It's just because I have two Trooper decks, and it's going by the old SAS. They have since been adjusted slightly, but I think the SAS limitations of this set in general makes it a little bit more difficult to properly evaluate and give a number to a deck. And it was never a precise science anyway, but this kind of makes it a bit more. But I think we all see higher numbers on average, and I think we can probably agree that that's fair. The deck, the set is definitely stronger in general, so the higher SAS numbers are expected. But how does that impact you if you're evaluating WoE decks? Do you put more or less stock in SAS this set compared to previous, or is it kind of just, how do you guys go into it?
Well, for me, it's hard to find that thing of what decks do I want to look at, right? So SAS has been a great, like, here's the queue of stuff I want to look at, even though I know not all of them are going to be good. You can either do that, or you can look for specific combos, right? Or specific cards that you want in your deck. Um, obviously I had my reoccurring segment, which I haven't done for a while, but it was fresh marks on my stream where I would look at all the decks that were 85 SAS or higher, just because I thought that was a good limit. And we would look at WoW decks there, and some were bonkers, and some were like, this doesn't look that good. So yeah, I think SAS would probably still have a kind of a correlation to doing good, but I think there's a lot of outliers. There's a lot of complexity and combos that it just can't capture, and so you still need to really look at the deck. Especially for me, things that I look at is like not all C is the same, and I really want to look at all my C cards to say like, what does it really have? Even though it's got over 10, if it's got no board wipes, I'm not sure about that deck.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's overrating a bunch of other stuff for C. So I look at all the C, I look at all the A. Um, yeah, you have to take a critical eye if you're looking for really good decks.
Mm. I've
Yeah.
always I've always kind of looked at the big number, as kind of a like, hey, this number is probably pretty close to the center of a distribution for how good this deck is, and the actual output's gonna have a tail that goes off this way and have a tail that goes off this way. And for or if not DT, excuse me, for WoW in particular, I feel like the that curve is a lot flatter and has reaches out farther in both directions, and so you'll see outputs that give you much lower lows and also higher highs relative to that number, and maybe also that number has a little bit of more wiggle room. Not doesn't quite hug the true center as close as some of the others. Maybe, but at the end of the day, too, I still think SAS is very good at. The other stats are great, even setting aside the big number, but also I think it's still great for telling you or giving you some sense, how good the cards are in your deck, even when things are not going well. And I think that's also maybe even more important in WoW, especially if you're looking at a deck that's relying on a combo or some such, right? Like if I tokenize a combo piece, all right, how good are the cards that I'm left with just in general? Like what's the overall card value, card quality of the pile that remains, right? So that's the thing I worry about too. But the need to test is always there and never went away. It shouldn't be a thing that you replace with SAS. And I do find too that I'm wanting a lot more test runs with the deck from WoW than I did with previous sets too, to get a true feel for how it's gonna perform. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% to that. I've struggled to find a deck's identity in like 5 games. It used to take me about 5 games to really think like, okay, this is what this deck wants to do, this is what it's capable of. And now I can play a deck in Winds of Exchange 5 times and it'll act like 3 different decks during those games.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that makes it harder for me to identify with decks when I can't really like, you know, get any consistency out of its identity in that regard.
Yeah, I think you know, efficiency and how a deck feels in Winds of Exchange is different, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't have kind of this similar type of efficiency that we've had. It's a different type of efficiency, I think. Um, but it also has a different type of feel. And I know not all people like that.
Can you
And that
elaborate on different kind of efficiency? Like, what do you mean exactly? Like, we always
well,
think of efficiency as like the SAS efficiency, where you're drawing cards and you're archiving cards.
yep. Well, you know, part of efficiency is also getting through your deck, right? And so, it's efficient in making a big board, and a big board can reap and win you the game. So it could still be efficient to getting to the end point, which is winning the game. Um, so I mean that's something it's obviously able to fill out the board quicker than any other set. and that's a different type of efficiency than we haven't seen before.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. This is a topic I had teed up for the third segment too, but we're roving, coach. So this is like, I think one of the great things that I like about Ghost Galaxy, and I don't know if this is something that they had in mind specifically to do for Winds of Exchange. It's definitely something that they had in mind for Grim Reminders. They mentioned it at KFC, but they're trying to put out new designs, new cards, new sets that challenge you to rethink things that you knew about the game, right? Things that you knew about how often you should be holding cards versus discarding, right, is a thing that they want you to kind of rethink for Grim Reminder specifically. And I think Woe really challenged us to reframe how we thought decks could be efficient and consistent. Um, like, okay, I'm not archiving as much, I'm not maybe drawing as much, but I'm getting more uses out of my cards on average. And in that sense, it's a more efficient use of the resources. I think it's hard to yeah, I can't archive things and see 3 more cards, but I'm now using a board of 8 Star Alliance things and then playing 5 and well, 13 is pretty efficient for a Star Alliance turn. It's just kind of in a different way. And you can argue about whether or not that's healthy for the game. But I'm getting more use out of the same number of cards versus seeing more cards. I don't know if that kind of reframes the notion of efficiency, but that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's you. It's almost like you gotta change the way that you think about it, because I think about a card like Auto Encoder. You're discarding this card to archive the top card of your deck, and it's totally not the same. But when I make a token, that's making a token from the top card of the deck. And usually you can't use that card anymore, right? But similarly with autoencoder, you might fill up your archive with 3 different houses worth of cards, and then you get into a clunky hand later. You Because of this different type of mechanic with making tokens, you have to think about the odds and kind of, do I want to make this token? What do I have already that I've gone through in my deck? What do I have coming in my deck? What are the important things that my deck is trying to do, to see like, okay, the probability is that I'm going to hit one of my important cards and it's a high percentage or it's a low percentage, and so that's going to influence my decision on, do I make this token or not. Um, so I think it is, you know, it's a different way to think about it, and I think it is a struggle because some people really feel bad sometimes when there's like, oh dang, I just made a token with that card that I really need, and they really feel bad about that. But for me, it's a different calculation, and sometimes auto encoders on the bottom of your deck too, and you don't win because of that. But to me, that's similar to making a token of a critical card.
So do you ever shy away from making tokens early on in a game? Like
Um,
early on, meaning like you have like a
yes.
full deck and you know half your cards are
Most
great, but
most of
you
the
just don't know.
time, no. But depending on the deck and depending on what it's up against, yes. And it's kind of like, oh, if they have an artifact that's just going to kill me, and I have artifact control, then no matter what, I have to get that card. Then I might not make a token. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it definitely depends on the deck too, because some decks lean into tokens, some decks can function without tokens.
Yeah, yeah. I don't find myself discarding token makers unless I'm like near the bottom and there's something very specific I'm looking for. It just yeah, I do the math on it, say okay, like there's a card that I need and there's like a 1 in 6 chance that I'll tokenize it, and I kind of weigh like, do I want to take that chance or not?
Yeah.
But when there's like a bigger deck of 20 cards, 10, 15, 20 cards, I'm usually not I'm just playing for the tokens, just to get the value. Um, there was actually a time period there when I was looking for decks for sale that had very low token generation
Mm-hmm.
because I did not like that randomization of what's going to come out, and I was trying to find decks that just had good value for the cards they were and that did not rely on the tokens. pretty hard to find those. They're definitely out there, but they're hard to search for and hard to parse.
Yeah.
They're definitely hard to search for. One thing I think about when on this topic is I think JT had an anecdote in one of another bottom of the Beaker episode where he talked about the way he likes to test, especially early on in a
Hmm.
set where it's just like, hey, this time playing through, I'm just gonna make tokens every single time, even if it's not good. I'm just gonna try something different to see how it goes. And so, I think with Winds of Exchange that would be interesting as well as one, I'm gonna go through and play 5 games where I make tokens every chance I get, and the next time I'm gonna not make tokens every chance I get. And I think some decks are okay with that, and some decks would just totally die because of that. But um, yeah, it is hard to search for good decks that don't need tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of this, I know some of this for me is self-selecting, but within the decks themselves, I almost always make the token unless I'm very low on deck and know that there's a thing I need to save. But the self-selecting bit from that is, if I'm looking at my NKFL Hexa, the two Winds of Exchange decks that I've picked really want their tokens also have ways of reclaiming tokens later in the game, whether it's through an outpost or a sandhopper or something along those lines. And so I like recognizing that it's a thing that can happen. You can try to pick decks that either have ways to recover or have ways of saying, or can just say, you know what, like making tokens is a fine plan B. And that plan B is strong enough where I might not play the same game, but I'm achieving a different sort of consistency in that I still have a strong output from my deck that's leaning on the tokens as a plan B, versus
Hmm.
my non-token plan A or what have you. Um, yeah, so it's tough. It's tough. It's tough to find those, and I think that's something that's really tough to see from a deck read. Really tough to see from a deck read. I mean, you can see the sandhoppers, you can see the outposts, you can see the pull-up stakes and what have you. But that's one you kind of have to get a feel for, especially if your token generation count is kind of in the middling range. And I think that's something that SAS is tough. It has a tough time uh, getting at, not because of any shortcoming necessarily, but I think it's just a tough thing to get. SAS is really good at counting up trees, but it's really hard at seeing forests, and that's just a hard thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, especially with 3 card combos that are becoming more and more prevalent in the game than they were early on.
Hmm.
Yep.
And actually, it's also worth noting there's no public OP data from any of the previous 2 sets, and that is a large factor in a lot of the SAS scores that we got from the first 3 sets.
Yeah.
Um, I know Nova's used that information greatly to adjust scores, and it's just not there anymore. Like Ghost Galaxy's not sharing that kind of data from Vault Tours this year. I don't know if they will, um, but I think that's a factor too.
Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? And on net,
I think that's definitely a bad thing. I don't see why they wouldn't share that data. I mean, there's a lot of nerds like us that like spreadsheets that, would love to have that kind of information.
I would love to have the information. I would also bemoan a world where SAS was perfect, or there was any rating system that was, quote unquote perfect. So yeah, I don't know.
I'm,
Yeah,
this is not a dig at SAS, but I'm not worried about that.
yeah.
Like I'm not
No,
worried
I'm
about
not worried about that either.
we're not
It's just
close to that.
interesting.
Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think we could do that either. And even if we could, even if we did have a system that could identify the best deck in the world,
Mm-hmm.
because this is Keyforge, that deck is never going to win every game.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. All right, taking off my devil's advocate hat. We want the data. We want the
Yeah,
data.
let's get
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Um,
Even with all the data that it had before, and it not only had Volter data, it had all, weekly play OP data as well.
Yeah,
And some of that, I don't think you can trust. I
sure.
remember one of my friends actually would do some data digging after I think it was after all the vault tours were gone, and for some reason, Yo Mama Mastery was like one of like the highest rated cards. Comparing its performance versus other cards, some like deck in some weird local region with Yo Mama Mastery was just
crushing it.
kicking butt, and so its stats were like crazy.
Well, I mean, what that tells me is that Niflhape is very underrated because Niflhape just completely obliterates the best
Yeah.
card in the game.
Don't care about your taunt. Don't care at all. Yeah, I've had some very unfortunate runs at local sealed events where I was the fourth player and couldn't stay, but my deck played every round. So what are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
But I mean,
Yeah,
there is a lot of junk in that like local data, but it's still, there's a lot of good stuff in there as well. And
sure.
in the long run, it will still provide valuable information, even at like the local events too.
Yeah,
So
Hopefully they surprise us once they start rolling out, the local implementation of playstyle.
yeah.
I know I still check playstyle like every couple weeks, and I open up on my phone and like refresh it and see if I can start a tournament or something like that. But nah, still nothing. They did say December.
To say December, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, guys. I mean, we so it's been, I don't know. We've talked 50 minutes on the first point, maybe. Ish. When are we gonna start throwing down some blows? I mean,
I was just gonna say, we've got to a lot of good stuff. I want to hear some rants from Quickdraw. Let's go.
Yeah. I was gonna say this. It's a pretty good segue. We're talking about like the tokenization and stuff like that.
mhm.
Um, I have a list of things that I think largely come from me, but they are also like general like public complaints about the set as well. That's been stated before in a lot of places. And the first thing that I think of is the increased variance through tokenization. I don't see this as a good thing. I I kind of I saw Ketzer's comment. Ketzer's comment saying that a game can have too much consistency is a bad thing. I would just say that I don't think Keyforge is close to the too much consistency. And I thought that the game was in like a nice sweet spot prior to Winds of Exchange as far as the randomness that was involved. Like I fully agree that randomness is good in a game and it's necessary. I just felt we had a good balance for my personal preference. And I
Mhm.
think the tokenization kind of takes it to like the next level for me. That it's just it's a little bit too much. And I know you're talking about the efficiency Zoc, where it's like, you see it as like, okay, well, maybe my autoencoder's at the bottom, maybe I tokenize the card that I need, and you're getting through your deck faster. And I hear that, but not every deck has that ability to have an outpost or a strange shell or a sandhopper or things like that. So this to me is probably the first thing that I think of when I think of my primary complaints with WoW.
Yeah, and like I said before, I think some people really don't like that, right? Yeah, I think even for me, I'm okay with it. I have to think about it differently, right? It's a different calculation I'm doing in my head, whether it's okay to make tokens or not. And I know that I could tokenize good stuff, and I've lost in KFL games because of that. But uh, yeah, it's hard. I think a hard change in your head. Um, and it's still not everybody's going to like that because it's a different type of variance. I mean, to your point exactly, even if we could tell the top deck because of variance in Keyforge, because of how Keyforge is, it's not going to win every game. So this is another variation of variance that's been introduced to Keyforge. Um, and yeah, to me, it's like it's part of what you have to expect and plan for when playing with Winds of Exchange.
Mm.
Yeah. JT, do you have anything to add to that one?
Not specifically. I think it's a fair criticism. I think it's a fair criticism, and I also think that I hope. Well, I don't think every set's gonna be for everybody, and I think that's an okay thing. Like TM trademark, that's an okay thing. I'm really hoping that Keyforge is big enough and great enough and long lived enough where we can look back and say, you know what, these were three sets that were not my favorite. I loved the game, but these three sets were not my favorite. And also, they're not an overwhelming necessarily part of the meta, and that's like it's okay. And there were some sets that are just for people other than me who are also in the game and really enjoy the game, and that's cool. They can have these sets. I do think that WoW uh, changed the notion of consistency a lot. I think it is also there are lots of decks in it that feel like they have a much more high variance than we previously saw. I mean, there's always been swingy effects. There's always been the combo deck that has no archiving, and if I happen to draw the like generosity key abduction in the right order, it's great. But if I see generosity in my opener and key abduction's the bottom card, like guess what? It's going to be a bad game. That sort of a thing. But yeah, I don't disagree. I think your point's fair.
You mentioned that like some people like some sets, and they're not for others. I get that. I used to hate Worlds Collide.
Yeah.
I no longer have a beef with Worlds Collide after Winds of Exchange came out. Me and Worlds Collide, we're cool. We're good now.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend, sort of thing.
Something like that. I also like the other rebuttal I would have for that is that, yeah, like I'm gonna play less Winds of Exchange than I think other people will. I still have a few that I like that I think are consistent enough that are still kind of fun to me. But I still have the problem that I might run into Winds of Exchange in the Crucible or in competitive events, and it I have such a strong distaste for playing against it that I'm actually avoiding playing games like currently. Um, so now I have to think like in the future when Grim Reminders comes out and whenever Skies comes out, hopefully they take away, like they're definitely going to put a dent in the Winds of Exchange. But there's like two ways this could go. They could either overpower Winds of Exchange to the point where like maybe I hate these next sets even more, uh, or they could kind of disappoint, and then Winds of Exchange is still prevalent in the competitive scene because the other sets aren't as good anyway. So neither of those feel like great paths for me, and that's why I have concern about what the precedent that this set sets for the future of the game.
I think it's fair concern. I also don't think that Winds of Exchange is going to go completely away, even if Grim Reminders and Amber Skies are excellent, like stronger sets generally on average, if only because of the variance inherent to Winds of Exchange that you were talking about is going to mean that they're going to have some pretty impressive high rolls that I hope we're not going to be topping, with consistency anytime soon. Like I hope we're not going to see decks that just shrug off like the turn 2 Halifest plus fresh marks plus all the like, whatever high rolls that Winds of Exchange can produce, or like the, hey, I've got 10 tokens on turn 2, good luck sort of high rolls. So I hope that's not a thing that we're topping with consistency. And I think that there are always going to be folks who want to shoot for the moon on those things, and you'll see them, but probably not as often. No.
And I think it's also a valid concern. I think we saw at Worlds, Winds of Exchange was 34% of the Archon field of Worlds. And of course, we saw Coda deck win it. So there's still competitive viability, but I think the concern about you're going to always have to go against WoW in TCO or NKFL. I think that's a reality right now, for sure. I almost feel like now that Ghost Galaxy has taken over Keyforge, maybe all the sets going on from now have like this next step up in competitiveness. This is my hope, and kind of what we saw with the first 4 sets or so. And obviously there was some up and down between them. AOA couldn't compete with Coda, but it can compete with other sets. Maybe there's this new level that we've reached with Ghost Galaxy sets, and they kind of have the same rock, paper, scissors battle between them, and it is a little bit higher up shelf than we were before, but we still kind of have a even balance, between them. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think I always think of the print runs as well, and I think that might be relevant here because I don't know what the print run's going to look like in the future for Ghost Galaxy, but the print run for Coda was like what was it, like 1.4 registered, somewhere around there now, like
Mm.
just a massive number.
Yeah.
And AOA was pretty high. Worlds Collide was still like sizable. But what we're seeing now is that the Winds of Exchange print run is going to be much lower than those sets. And the first thing I think is thank God, because I think if we had 1.4 million WoW decks, I don't think anyone would ever play anything besides WoW. But by keeping these print runs lower, it might allow the floor to be higher for the power level of future sets
Mm.
without like destroying the meta and like making older decks obsolete. So that could be a good thing, but if Ghost Galaxy is, you know, hopefully successful enough to be printing massive print runs again in line with AOA, you know, then it might become a problem.
Mm.
That's true. And I think to your kind of original point, like if Grim Reminders is not competitive with WoW, that's bad for the game.
Hmm. Yeah, and I will also say, like, I don't want to spend too much time on Grim Reminders, but my fear is kind of like sort of theoretical, because I did get to play Grim Reminders at KFC and I had a blast. It was wonderful. It felt powerful, but it felt like a lot of decision space. Um, so like I don't have like this. It's not like a well-informed fear that Grim Reminders is going to be either like way stronger or way less. I just had fun playing the game again, which was a really cool feeling.
And I think that's awesome. And I think that's a thing that I've heard across the Keyforge scene, which is bring back sealed vault tours,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because then it doesn't matter if your set's better than other sets. You're going to be having fun within your set, right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Totally.
I look forward to Grim Reminders sealed vault tours.
yeah,
Fingers crossed for that. I also wouldn't be surprised. The farther out we get, the farther forward we get. I mean, at some point, I would not be surprised to see some sort of a set rotation. I know it's not been like anything that we've heard
mm,
them really hint at, but
They didn't take it off the table.
they didn't take it off the
yeah,
table. And it's like it's hard to imagine 20 years out, Keyforge is still alive and kicking and going strong, and there's no set rotation. It's like, but where between now and then would it happen? I'm not sure, but I'd have to imagine like
yeah,
at some point it becomes very practical, almost necessary. I have no idea at what point it becomes more necessary than practical, but yeah.
yeah. And without getting again too far afield, I do think that there are creative ways of implementing rotation that doesn't just mean last three sets. You know, you could have creative combinations of older sets that are legal as well. You know, like there's other ways around it to be a little unique and creative, which I think Ghost Galaxy has been very amenable to, like kind of innovating. So certainly, I hope that's on the table for them.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, and some chats, comments in the chat too, talking about how some there are, popular sealed events from primes past or events past where it wasn't all one set and you can mix and match. So also opportunities to combine some past favorites without just knocking them off the shelf. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So I'm supposed to be complaining.
Complain away.
On to the next complaint. Let's
On to the
go.
next
Quick draw.
complaint. Next complaint.
We have 3,457 of them. You got to get
Yeah,
going.
we got to move faster than this, and I need more whiskey for this too. Um,
I have some for you.
ship it over. JT mentioned earlier, those kind of turns where you can have 8 tokens and you play 5 cards from hand, and you're like, how did I have 13 cards in one single turn? And Zach, you and I were debating this earlier. Like, how often does that really happen? To me, it happens often enough that it feels bad. Where your opponent has a board of 6, and then they still end up playing like 3 or 4 cards from hand, and they do that for a couple turns in a row, and you're like, how this doesn't add up anymore. That bothers me. And I also I like to track discard piles. I like to have like compare their discard with what's in their deck and have an understanding of what's coming. And they could have a board of 6 creatures and their deck's empty, and I have no idea what they could still have. And obviously, you have some context clues. You can kind of like use that stuff to figure out. But I feel like that takes a bit away. And like maybe some people would say like, oh well, it's just like memorization or looking at things. But to me, it's kind of it's randomness on the other side as well. Like even if I'm not the one that's tokenizing a random card, I actually had a game at Worlds where my opponent had some tokens out, and I didn't know if he tokenized his Rant and Rive, and I did my best to play around it, and it turns out it was like one of the first tokens that he made, and I never killed it during the game, and I had to play the whole game not knowing if he had it or not. And if he did, he would have won, and he did not have it because it was sitting in there right in front of us the entire time. Um, but I don't know. I feel like I don't want to play like this game is built on the 12-12-12 foundation, and this just turns it on its head. And to me, it really like revolutionizes the game in a way that I do not appreciate.
See, for that one, I disagree because that rant and rive situation, that was the same thing. Like if they have too much to protect, it's like, oh, how high up do I go? Do they have it? It could be their bottom card of their deck. You never know. So you always like, if you have too much to protect in your deck, it forces your opponent to play different, regardless of if it's in your hand or not, right? And it's the same thing if with rant and rive, if it's been tokenized or if they don't even, or if it's in their hand, right?
Yeah, it
So to
definitely creates a
me,
puzzle. Yeah, it definitely creates a puzzle.
it's a puzzle. And then the 12-12-12, I don't know. I think we've seen lots of decks that they try and barely play one house. They either archive all of one house or, I don't know. I don't think this breaks it. I I don't see it.
Hmm.
How does this break it?
Well, because you can play or use 14 cards in a single turn from a single house.
I mean, you could do that
That's
before.
if you draw your whole deck. Sure, there's things like that. That takes very intricate setup. This is one where it's like, you know, feats of strength with Berserker, and I now have like a full board of Berserkers. Your whole board's wiped, and they have the Rev and the Star Song out, so they don't all die. And now it's like, okay, well now I need a board wipe, and if I don't have a board wipe, then you've got 9 creatures reaping, and oh, you got a few other Brobnar cards from hand as well the next turn, and you know, it's just not fun for me to have to like be faced with those kind of situations.
Yeah, and that's understandable. And I don't think that breaks a 12-12-12. To me, I think that's the next point, which is the spike cards, right? To me,
Hmm.
that's like, okay, they've done something which I think is like, higher in the power level, or maybe kind of across the board, there's these cards that are a little bit higher in the power level than previous sets. And I think the Berserker feats of strength is one of those where it can set up a situation that is harder to deal with than we've seen before. To me, that doesn't break the 12-12-12, but it is a what I would consider power creep, and it's something that you have to prepare for when playing against WoW. And yeah, not everybody's gonna like that.
Yeah, you mentioned the spike for the next point that I had, and yeah, like what I see from a lot of this stuff that the power creep you mentioned is that you're shortening the game because you are creating these situations where you can get to your third key a lot faster. And when you shorten the game, you're reducing the number of decisions that have to be made in that game. There's just, logically, there are more decisions to be made in a 10 turn game than a 6 turn game. And in WoW, I've seen so many times where you have a deck that can check for key 3 on turn 7 pretty consistently. And by shortening the game, it just feels to me like you are removing some of the strategic elements that come in the game to play. I prefer the games that are, kept more tight, where you have, a couple creatures you have to decide, like, do I want to reap twice or do I want to like play 4 cards? Like those kind of intricate decisions are different in WoW. When in WoW, your decision is like, well, do I want to reap for 8 or do I want to play a membership drive for 9? And like those are the kind of questions that I see in WoW more often, as opposed to like the more small scale um, things that I feel have more strategic and long term game planning involved.
Yeah, I guess what I would say to that is the meta has shifted, right? And you have to be ready to control their board. And if you control their board, it's not going to be a 7 turn game. And that means that now a lot of decks that you used to play are no longer viable. And I know you play in KFL a lot and competitive queue a lot, which means everybody's bringing their banger WoW decks, which is all the good stuff. Not all WoW decks are like that, But yes, good WoE decks can do that. So you have to control their board. And that changes the meta. It means that now you can't play a lot of decks that you used to be able to. And it means that if you don't control their board, yes, it's going to be over in 7 turns. But if you do control the board, it is going to be a longer game.
Well, to play devil's advocate to that, I have WoE decks that can check on turn 7 that don't care about board at all.
Yeah,
You know,
there's decks before that that would do that too. I mean, there's
I think, yeah,
OTK decks in Coda.
I have one. I love it. It's not consistent though. And those are rare. Those are very rare, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have a Coda deck that can rush anywhere near what 10 of my WoE decks can do. And the fact that they're more accessible now, like to the very first point that we made when we opened this episode, like the accessibility of the power level was necessary, but it's just so prevalent now that sure, like yeah, there are Coda decks out there that have like crazy untamed turns that can forge 3 keys in a turn with Nature's Call and Dust Pixie and Chota and things like that. Yeah, those exist, but out of 1.4 million decks, they are still very hard to find. And so I think the prevalence is relevant here as well.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, and it's a fair concern. I think it is the state of the world right now, and I understand that not everybody likes that. I think you can try and tech against it to some extent. And Keyforge is Keyforge, so it's always rock, paper, scissors. You can't tech against everything.
That's true.
But not everybody's gonna to like that, right? Not everybody likes that style of play, and so it means maybe, hey, take a break from the competitive queue because right now the meta is not what you enjoy. That happens, and it's happened to other people in the past. I see JT's brought up my deck, which I don't have Future SAS on. It's gone down a lot in SAS.
Prospector took a hit. Yeah.
But we can talk about that later because I don't think Quick Draw's done here.
Well, you mentioned the sea and the creature control, and this is something else that's kind of bothered me. Like, yeah, like I have to adjust to the meta. Everyone has to adjust to the meta. You need to bring more sea. It happens that one of my favorite decks prior to WoE is not nearly as good anymore, and that's kind of, you know, personal rant of my own. It hurts, you know, like.
Same here.
But I worry about the power creep in the sense of creature control being needed. I think that might be a bigger long-term concern for the health of the game than other types of power creep. People talk about Infernus as power creep and how powerful it is and what it can do, and like sure, like yeah, it's stronger than some other discards that came before it. It's not really like a game-altering power creep. When you have a set that can make 10 tokens on the first turn, it's going to win every game if you don't have C against it. And that to me is the kind of power creep. 10 tokens is exaggeration. I apologize. 6 tokens is, you know, adequate. The types of wide boards we see, in my opinion, is a extremely dangerous type of power creep. And that's what I worry about long term. It's not like single cards that do great things like Infernus or Val Jericho or things like that. It's really like the consistency and the number of decks that can do what WoE decks can do, and like just win a game by having a board on the second turn of the game or a Hellfest in the first turn of the game. That's kind of what concerns me.
Yeah, and I think it's a valid concern. I think we'll have to see how Ghost Galaxy approaches it going forward. You know, I think one of the things that we talked about is I feel Worlds Collide had a similar impact to the meta when it first came out. It killed Coda Rush with all the Infernus. It killed Coda Steel with all the anti-steel effects. And it totally changed the meta. It was all Worlds Collide. And I know a lot of people were upset. But we saw later that, then Mass Mutation came out, and it could compete with Worlds Collide. I agree. It is a concern. Like, if there's Winds of Exchange can always produce a good board, then all the next sets are going to have to be able to handle that board efficiently to be able to compete competitively.
And just for some extra perspective, I also thought that C was, or creature control was too necessary when mass mutation came out, and so this like really ramped it up to even another level now. So like you can see where I'm coming from. Like, yeah, if I thought that it was bad in mass mutation, obviously I'm going to think it's like end of the world in Winds of Exchange.
Yeah, I mean, we're back to we're actually finally to where FFG thought the game was when Coda came out, whereas the board rules, you can win by Brobnar fighting. We're there.
Hey, we did it. Oh man, and well, thanks to Brick Nasty as well. You know,
Oh,
Brick
big
Nasty's
time.
like, well, we want people to fight. How do we get them to fight? Let's get them to get the same benefit from reaping from fighting.
Yeah, it's interesting. The big board rushes and the continual refilling of the board is a thing to be worried about. I think that's a thing that can be adjusted to. Hopefully, we'll see. There's always going to be the board flood decks that will be a thing. I honestly think the previous point, or the tag along point, the companion point about game lengths in general going down is more worrisome. But I don't know. These could be related. We'll see where Grim Reminders nets out. It could be that this is a pendulum swing. Hopefully, as some would say, and then we'll push to another side of the pendulum with our 16 power double pipped creatures to balance things out.
Yeah. So Zoc, you were saying like Worlds Collide came and pushed like the Coda Rush out. Obviously, we see Coda Rush is fine. Coda Rush is back, and so that meta is kind of like shifted. Um, I assume you also think that in a couple sets from now, we're gonna see like this massive need for creature control kind of not shift out necessarily, but like kind of naturally evolve. Is that what you believe as well?
I hope Ghost Galaxy designs the set so that the meta continues to shift. I mean, what I've seen, I haven't played a lot of Grim Reminders. I wasn't at KFC 2. I've printed a couple decks, but what I've seen from the cards is key cheats are going to be super important. Combos into key cheats will be super important. And so, I think the meta will be all about how do I pull off these key cheats and how do I get the combos to pull off these key cheats and be able to rush to those. Um, does that beat Woe? I don't know. I don't know the set well enough. But I'm hoping that there will be a continuous meta shift. Um, because that's what I've seen kind of all along in Keyforge, and I love it. It's that kind of rock paper scissors. You never know what they're gonna bring, and depending on what they bring, you can beat it or you can get stomped by it.
I think you're unknowingly teeing up my next complaint here.
Perfect
All right.
segue. Let's hear it.
Yeah, you talk about how Grim Reminders, being a combo set with the key cheats, it does have a ton of key cheats, which, if I'm concerned of anything in Grim Reminders, it's the number of key cheats that are pretty easy to pull off. But when you talk about combos, cards like Abyssal Sight, I tend to think Abyssal Sight, I think, is a bigger offender of power creep in a bad way than Befuddle. And the reason I say that is because I feel like Abyssal Sight really takes away a lot of the skill of handcrafting throughout a game. And if you don't have a deck that can safely tuck away and archive something that is safe from Abyssal Sight, I feel like Abyssal Sight can just make or break a game depending on when it's drawn or when you draw the card that you're digging for. And if you're talking about combos, yeah, Abyssal Sight, like I've seen a lot of people say, like Abyssal Sight's necessary because Jenka decks are oppressive. And it kind of like does a number on those if you can hit their Jenka. If you miss the Jenka, well, I mean, I hope you have a backup plan. But at the same time, if we're not talking about just the extreme of combo decks, like the number of decks that can be, taken care of, handled by an Abyssal Sight at the right time is a lot. Like, say you bring a deck with a board wipe or a couple board wipes, and they happen to Abyssal Sight it at the right time, and now you can't handle their tokens. Like Abyssal Sight to me is a major offender of like taking away skill in the game. It's kind of easy mode for disruption. Um, and so if future sets are going to be kind of reliant on combos or setting up things or handcrafting, which I think a huge part of what the pros of Grim Reminders have been like, yeah, it's going to encourage you like maybe I don't discard this, maybe I hold this. Abyssal Sight kind of laughs at that and throws it out the window.
I totally agree. Uh, Abyssal Sight is super strong. And like any card that's super strong, you have to see that it's in their deck and prepare against it. You know, you might play your combo pieces early if they have Abyssal Sight. But I agree, it's super strong. It's one of those spike cards like you talked about, that can ruin combos. I still don't think we know. Does that destroy Grim Reminders?
Yeah, no, we don't know. I don't know that either.
Yeah. So I think it's premature to talk about that, but it's super strong for sure.
Yeah. I think one way for me to kind of summarize my issues is that I have a personal expectation for where I want a game to fall in like the luck skill deck and where I want like variance to fall. Where I want, I do like luck in games. I do. And I just felt that for me personally, Keyforge had a sweet spot before Winds of Exchange. And I feel that has been ramped up this set. And I recognize that others maybe don't feel that same way. Maybe others have a different taste in gaming where they say this is a good mix for them. For me, it's not. And so, yeah, I can just never play WoW myself, but I'm still going to run into it. And that's kind of what concerns me. It's just it feels like a bit of a different game than it was for me. That's kind of out of my sweet spot of gaming, where it was before. So,
I do think it's fair to say that Abyssal Sight in particular, Plunder is in the similar camp, and the token making mechanic generally, it does represent a shift from maybe more strategic to tactical, being where the game is asking you to think. I think that's kind of fair, right? You have to live in the moment a little bit more than rely on some long-term planning. I think it also is fair to say that it's a push towards a little bit more luck in the luck skill deck equation. I think that's fair. And I was looking back over. So I think that's totally fair. And looking back over my Hexad, the 6 decks that I brought to NKL this season, 2 of them being WoW, and trying to see if there were some kind of similarities amongst the others in terms of what I thought were reasonable things to be taking into a competitive field where I was expecting a decent amount of WoW. And I do think there's a lot of decks where, I'm going to be trying to doing strong things in the moment. There's maybe some tactical plays as opposed to more handshapey things. The one deck that, and this is big shout out to Astron, who was I think the original opener of this deck, Torhild Lord Sword Cunningham. Awesome deck. It's been really tough to play into a field with Abyssal Sights and Befuddles, though, because there isn't a ton of archiving, and I'm trying to build towards a big combo, right? So that was the thing that I learned about this deck this season. It does other things that are great in combating tokens. So if it's just WoW in general and it's not Belatoran Warriors, then Poison Waves and Ammonia Clouds have been great, especially these things that are trying to clean up the board without giving you chains, because there's nothing worse than feeling like you've just handled the first wave and now you have to handle a second wave while chained. That's tough. And I think that people learned maybe not all wipes are equal when you have to get right back on your feet and combat another wave. But yeah, I think it's a fair point. It's just trying to address kind of some questions on what do you bring? It was top of mind very much so when putting together the list, especially for the ones that were not necessarily WoW themselves. But yeah, I think it's a fair point. I really don't want to see more things like Abyssal Sight and Talent Scout. I think one of them was probably fine. 2 of them feels like a lot. Both of them with a Plunder as well can start to feel a little rough. Rough.
At least a lot of these are rares that we're talking about now. Plunder,
Abyssal Sight.
Abyssal Sight's common, no, but like Plunder's are rare, Talent Scouts are rare, Corner of the Markets are rare. Like, you know, yeah, they're very good cards, but
Well,
at least a couple of these are harder to come by.
Veggie, as we lovingly call it on our team, with our team. I mean, this is a deck that is among those that very often is checking for key 3 by turn 6 or 7. And not only that, but it has Abyssal Sight, the Befuddle. It'll throw a catch and release in there to disrupt your hand. It'll play the Talent Scout with, pull-up stakes backup. It has a Corner of the Market. In between all of these things, you're probably not only having to stop my 3 keys within the 6 or 7 turns that I'm proposing to make them in, but also doing it through some significant disruption. So it's fair. The decks are out there. Yeah. Well, I don't know, Quick Draw. Did you have any others on your list, or should we move on to the other piece of bread in the sandwich here?
I think I tried to cut myself a little short. I think I'm good. There was a few other stats that I thought were interesting, but before we go to those, I will also just admit that I whiffed on the meta call for, I think, NKFL and for Worlds both. I expected to see a lot more Winds of Exchange at Worlds.
Yeah.
And I went with an AOA Rush deck, and I ended up playing against an AOA Rush deck, a Winds of Exchange, which I was able to win, and then a Coda Rush deck. And so I lost against the Coda and AOA matchups. I guessed wrong. I think maybe my 2 opponents that beat me were also probably playing for the same thing. Like, I think because AOA and Coda Rush are pretty strong against Winds of Exchange. And maybe that was why also the World Champion deck was what it was. I guess it was a library. I don't know if it was called a Rush deck, really. But Gear Song, I think it was called Gear Song. But anyway,
the Italians and their Italian decks, too good.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm part Italian. I've mentioned that before, Quick Draw. I'm sure that I've got Italian blood in my veins. This is where my Keyforge
you and
prowess
Streusel from Sicily, right?
from. That's right.
There it is. And then I also admit NKFL I didn't make wise decisions in my lineup this season, and I'm paying the price for that for sure.
That's tricky. This was a season of experimentation. I don't think you should feel bad about the science. I think that we were exploring some woe this season in NKFL, like a lot of the other leagues and the folks in the league, and science is good.
So I have a question. This is a woe retrospective. So I know you've brought woe to your NKFL lineups. How have they done? What do you think about that?
They have been outstanding. They've been outstanding. Very strong. I actually regret not taking a third, and I had even a fourth that I was considering. But the 2 that I took were Veggie Razor, the Bandit Survivalist, which was the deck that I played at the open event at Worlds, and I think I missed out on the win-in match to a play mistake, which was unfortunate, but it's definitely a deck that's capable of going the distance. And also Sai Filavekis, which I will get roasted, I'm sure, in the chat for my pronunciation of Filavequa. I don't know. But both of them have been doing really well. Sai has not lost yet, despite some very tough competition. And I think Veggie Razor has only dropped 1 game, and it was also against very tough competition. But the decks have been very good. They've also opened up, some room for my other decks to get chances to shine too. It's just kind of a really cool format in terms of, what a new edition does to your lineup and what, opportunities that gives you for matchup crafting. But they've been great. To answer your question, they've been great. A lot of fun to play. I think that I did get very lucky with the decks that I opened in terms of finding decks that really match my play style and affinity and have been fun to play, and also bring with them some consistency. And I am a big lover of the negative play experience decks. So you know,
Yeah, you are. Oh my God.
unashamedly bring the the double heavy subsidies deck with a couple celestial gorms, and I'll make my 18 amber and then pop the heavy subsidies and let you struggle to forge keys for 18 while I'm paying getting premium. But yeah, so unashamedly, unashamedly.
Well, I didn't fare as well. I haven't fared as well with my WoW decks. One of them was banned, I think 3 of the first 4 matches, and it's been banned 4 out of 6 so far. Um, Trooper deck, and it's lost the 2 games that I've played with it. My other Trooper deck that I brought has not received a ban, but it's only, I think, 2 and 3 is my record with it. So again, not good. Part of that is kind of holes in my lineup outside of the WoW decks. But I think a part of it is that neither of these decks they performed like they did in my preparations. I felt like I've had some bad luck with the draws, but they're high variance rush decks, and they are lower consistency than I actually thought they were when I put them in my lineup. And when I made my lineup, I still had a pretty similar concern about the variance in the set, and I played them anyway, and they're just proving to kind of bite me in the butt with you know, not getting things in the right order. Or, maybe it's, with the troopers, if the opponent has lots of C that is able to handle big troopers like that, then those decks punch a lot less hard without the ability to epic poem a lot. So that was kind of what I was hinting at with, like, not predicting the meta as well, is that I think these 2 decks aren't quite good in this meta, but I think in a meta where there's not like so much C going around, I think they would do a little bit better. But in general, my WoW has not been good for me this season.
Mm.
Yeah, and for me, in the classic sloppy lab work style, I did go with an experiment. 2 of my best decks from before I didn't go with, which would be Researcher Tower Child and Chair.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think Researcher Tower Child is good at all in a WoW meta, actually.
Hmm.
It can't handle the board. But I went with 4 Winds of Exchange. One has been bonkers and been awesome, and the others have been performing all right. One maybe a little bit more inconsistently than I would like. Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely inconsistency with WoW that you have to prepare for. But I've also been having fun with it. And yeah, there's definitely probably at least a couple of these 2 or 3 that will be in my next NKFL lineup. We'll see.
Mm. Chair
Yeah,
Chair's the AOA Gangernaut deck. Is that the same one?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, I love that one. Love that one.
I know, me too.
Yeah, it's an awesome deck. It's not as good against WoW, but
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
haven't decided yet if my next season is going to be like improving on my WoW choices or just go to something that I have fun with, Because if I like I said, I haven't been having fun playing with or against it for the most part. Maybe I just need to have a season in NKFL where I'm playing decks that I enjoy. Maybe they don't give me the best chance of winning, but maybe they do because they're decks that I actually enjoy.
Oh man, you know, enjoyment in Keyforge. That sounds like a great idea for an episode.
Fishing for an invite back here already. It is a good one though. It really is, and yeah, we're gonna save that one for another day. I did hint at some stats that I found. I was kind of digging last minute through like some of the information because as I was talking about like Wodex checking for key 3 at turn 7, and I was trying to think like, okay, like is there more to it than just like reaping out with tokens? And so I started to look at some of the enhancement like data, or I don't know, it's data really, but and also like just the raw amber pips that exist in this set. And a couple interesting things popped out. They're not like super striking. It's not like super oppressive. But I did see that there are more Ember enhanced cards in this set than there were in Mass Mutation. There are 3 common creatures that offer at least 1, and there's one that offers 2 in the Steward from Equidon. In Mass Mutation, Gorion's Attendant offers 2, Mutagenesis offers 1, so they're like pretty similar, but there's one more common creature that offers more. At Uncommon, each set has 1 card that offers 2, and Trinket, Wild Bounty. And then at Rare, both sets have Amphora, and then Mass Mutation has Dark Queen Gloriana, and WoW has Curse Relic. So like slightly more in WoW from the enhanced side, but not something that would be like a massive difference, I don't think. But I didn't really do the math on like how frequently common cards show up with the enhancements, and like, you know, maybe it is significant to have that 1 extra common creature plus the Curse Relic. I don't know. You guys are probably better with stats than I am and calculations, that kind of thing.
I don't think that one is as huge. I mean, it's one common card out of a whole bunch, right? But you did do some other math, which I do think is a little bit more impactful, right?
Yeah, I was looking at like just raw Amber pips in each set, and WoW is actually not at the top of any of these for like raw Amber pips across the entire set. 116 cards in WoW have at least 1 Amber pip on them. Actually, I have exactly 1. I think there's 2 cards that have 2, which is Pax Sariana and Tangaika. But where it gets a little bit different, so Mass Mutation has 131 for reference, 131 cards with an Amber pip. Where it does get a little different is at the common rarity. Winds of Exchange has 34 cards at common rarity with an Amber pip. Mass Mutation has 28 at common. So, Zoc, you like pointed out like it sounds small, 34 to 28, it sounds reasonable, but at common that's like almost 25% increase.
Yeah, it's actually a big increase. I think so. Yeah, almost 25%. That's huge. I mean, that's definitely power creep. And I'm not sure. Did you look at any other sets? Is Mass Mutation the highest before that, or?
At common, I don't think I didn't quite get that far, but I can pull it up fairly quickly.
I mean, it was the lead in the meta. I don't think it was necessarily for Ember pips on common cards that it was like the lead in the meta, but I think it's still valid to compare it against.
Yeah. Coda has 23 at common with 1 pip. AOA has 29. Worlds Collide has 30. And Dark Tidings has 23. So, yeah, it's the most at common by far.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd have to dig into hidden Amber on play or not printed Amber on play type things, you know, like the Steel 1 effects, count your rad pennies and such and see where things net out. You feel like that ought to be a thing that could be balanced fairly easily if it's the thing they were trying explicitly to balance. Just Amber from hand, you know, as a stat, and even if you're kind of worrying about, you know, steel effects and such. I mean, I was talking to Second Act the other day, and we were like, yeah, did Talent Scout really needed the pip? It's like, well, maybe they just need an extra pip in Equidon. And they're like, where can we put this? Talent Scout, great, fine. Like, well, I don't know. If we're like over our budget on pips anyway, did it need one? Maybe not. But yeah.
I've thought a few times how Abyssal Sight and Befuddle would still be incredible cards.
They'd still be good. They'd still be good. I mean, as would Control the Weak. I guess the thinking was, well, if cards with the potential to whiff, we'll throw a pip on there just so you feel like you got a consolation. But at the end of the day, you have a card that is very powerful when its skill ceiling is reached, also giving you an additional bonus, just being really strong. Yeah.
And at the highest levels, it doesn't whiff because they're all good cards.
All good cards.
Also that, that's true.
Yeah.
But also those players know what they're doing at the highest levels too. You're not gonna whiff on a Befuddle. You're gonna hold it for the right time, or you're gonna, you know.
Yeah.
I whiff on Befuddles all the time. What are you saying, Quick Draw?
Stay sloppy, man.
Nice.
Uh, the sandworm that you referenced earlier is crazy too, because like when that sandworm was sent out as part of the game found to some people, it had no amber pips on it, 16 power after fight, shuffle it into your deck, and you're like, wow. Like I looked at that card and was like, this is an awful card. And then they released Grim Reminders, and it went to two. Like that card would have actually been good with one, but it went straight to two, and now it's just like a really insane card. I think now.
You gotta compete with woe, right?
Right, here we go.
Life's hard for the old dust pixies out there. It's down the
Yeah.
dumps. Yeah. Nice. Uh, well, I have done an absolutely terrible job pacing us through the topics here. So I'm going to say, I don't know. Are there other things we really want to hit before we actually do play a game at some point? Maybe.
I guess I don't know, Zaki. I feel like you have done a pretty good job of already answering this, but I'll give you another chance since we talked about this earlier. Like for someone like me who is like not enjoyed this set at all, what would you tell someone like me how to like kind of just get over it and just stop worrying about it and just have fun when you're playing with Woe?
Well, if you don't like woe, there's nothing I can tell you that is gonna make you like woe, right? And um, honestly, like if you really don't like some of the mechanics in woe, you might need to take a break and wait until Grim Reminders. Um, I do think as smart people, like if your goal was to be competitive, there's ways you can tech against it. But if your goal is to have fun, then maybe focus more on, you know, casual at your locals or whatever, as opposed to things where WoW is going to get played a lot, which is a competitive queue in TCO and in KFL. Um, yeah, yeah, I think the answer is different to everyone because their experience with WoW and kind of how they react to WoW and what they're trying to get out of Keyforge is different.
Hmm.
What if I want to have fun and be competitive?
The cake and eat
Why
it
can't I
too.
have both?
Well, you
Yeah.
Yeah,
can play stuff that just beats up WoW
like Dark Tidings, right?
if that's what you think does it.
Diplomatic
I would
indeed.
love to see you go to Diamond and win Diamond with all DT.
Oh,
I would love to
Zoc,
see that.
hey, listen, I just want to go to gold once. Let's not even talk about diamond yet. I mean, I'm going back to bronze first of all. So,
If if you win Diamond with all TD decks, I will custom make you some really cool shit.
oh
Oh,
man,
Sloppy lab work,
do I,
whatever you want, keys,
wow.
whatever it is.
Do I
okay.
have to? Can I get to diamond any way necessary, and I just have to win
Yeah,
in diamond?
yeah,
All right. And you say win all of diamond with all DT decks.
yeah.
Piece of cake. All right. Challenge accepted.
I think you can do it.
I think I might need to borrow a deck from a friend.
I was gonna say. So, how much is it gonna take you to buy Enchantress Ollie?
I'm gonna have to. Yeah, that one's gonna cost a lot.
That one's
That
gonna
one's
cost a
not for
lot.
sale.
But I was thinking about this the other day because I was like, hey man, we gotta see what Enchantress Ollie is gonna actually cost us to acquire. But then we
No,
need
no,
the
he's
actual decks that we're gonna play once it's banned.
exactly. That was the other thing. It was like, well, even if I could pry that off of his hands, no. Enchantress Ollie is not for sale. It's a friend of mine. Yeah, I respect his decision.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna bring this up. Fudgenator said, "Oh, don't like WoW. This game's not for you." Sounds too much like a Magic the Gathering to me, and that's not at all what I said, Fudgenator. Um,
No, I didn't take it that way
what
either.
I'm saying is like everybody interacts with Keyforge differently, and you need to do what's best for you. And if you don't like WoW, you the fact is WoW is being played a lot in TCO right now in the competitive queue and in NKFL. If you don't like that, then don't play in those. That's just the reality of the fact. But there's a lot of other Keyforge you can play. So I'm just saying you know, you have to recognize the reality of that WoW is being played a lot.
It is certainly played a lot on the TCO comp queue now. I haven't seen it in Kagi a ton. So if you're Japanese your jam, you're probably not seeing a ton of WoW.
There you go.
And yeah, bug your teammates when they're not crazy busy to play the games. Although we've been testing WoW games, I guess too.
Yeah, right. Well, my only problem with Kagi is that I haven't been able to get a match in 2 months because I was so excited to play the season. I got all my matches done early, and I'm in the top cut now, which is fantastic. And I'm just I have to keep waiting. I know. Like, what am I supposed to do? I still can't play Kagi matches. I gotta wait for JT and JDG and others to.
Yeah.
I think that is a great point, though, because there are a lot of leagues like that. You know, Aurora for a long time was having different Time Shaper leagues with a lot of different unique kind of setups.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other areas where you can spend your time if you don't like WoW.
For sure.
Indeed. And yeah.
Okay, so JT, I think that was all I had then.
Okay.
You were asking if there was anything else we wanted to.
Yeah.
I think I'm good now. I think I got it all off my chest.
Good for part 1 of the WoW Rand episode. All right, excellent. Perhaps we'll hear a word from our sponsors then, maybe? Let's see. I have a note from a sponsor. This is a good one, actually. We have some dancers on our team, and this episode today was sponsored by none other than the Watch Your Step School of Dance. And they left us a nice little note. Do you have 2 so left feet? Well, unleash your dance potential with Watch Your Step School of Dance, where every move is a key to unlocking rhythmic mastery. Join with our special introductory offer and earn Amber Shards for personalized choreography and exclusive accessories. Whether you're into salsa with Sorians or ballroom with Brobnar, sign up and forge your own unique style on the dance floor. Enroll now at www.watchyourstepschoolofdance.com or call 1-800-KEY-DANCE to book your first session. Thanks so much to Watch Your Step School of Dance, friends of the show, great patrons of the game. Yes, you can actually go to that website and see internet things. I will not promise what you'll find. Oh, indeed. And folks, I want to let you all know that Bottom of the Beaker is recorded live on Wednesday nights at 9:30 Eastern right here at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork. You can find archives of our past shows and other streams over at youtube.com. We're at Sloppy Labwork over there. And for the very best content, 34? No, 57 times distilled and straight from the bottom of the beaker. Search for that very phrase, bottom of the beaker, in your podcatcher of choice, and we'll be there ready to talk about your woes or woe enjoyments with you. Thanks so much to our special guest this evening, Xoque from Data Forge Stream. Thanks so much, Xoque, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. And
thanks, Xoque.
Yeah, quick draw. Any final words for the folks getting off the last audio stop?
Just big thanks to Xoque. We can't wait to have you on again. Appreciate you having the patience to deal with me and my rants this evening. You guys I appreciate you guys letting me unleash this time. Normally I'm, a bit more reserved, so thank you. And everyone else out there listening, stay sloppy.
I think it needed to be said, though, so I appreciate it because I know you're not the only one. Tabletop Royale, they've classically said, they're fed up with WoW. I
was looking for clips of Nathan all day today, and I couldn't find them.
Yeah, and I know some of the chat's been outspoken as well. So certain people, they're fed up with WoW. So speak up, Quick Draw. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the honest and genuine takes are always the most appreciated. So don't hold them back. I think it's important to say it if it's your truth, as it were. I've been enjoying exploring WoW while also seeing that there is an uptake in the variants and kind of luck involved with it. For the competitive stuff, I've been avoiding some of the higher variance things. But I mean, even Veggie Razor, there are games where it's like, man, I tokenized the Befuddle, the Abyssal Sight, the Corner of the Market, and the Talent Scout. This is not the best. And it's still a good deck, but it's not what it could be. And there is some frustration in there, but those games are rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, what should we play this evening? We haven't kind of agreed on a game.
Yeah, we're playing a DT match, right?
I'm cool with that. I'm down for anything.
No, I'm kidding. We always play a game that is at least somewhat related to the theme of the show of the evening. So I surely expect we're going to play a WoW game of here. Hand and Brain is tradition with three of us.
As is tradition. As is tradition. Yeah, we should do some. We should do of a WoW show throwdown. I don't know. I can go throw some O rhymes in there.
As a WoW hater, what do you want to play in WoW? Quick draw.
Yeah, so I guess the first question is if I'm going to be the hand or the brain here. And just as a reminder, as the brain will bring the deck and make the house decisions, and the hand will play the deck without being able to make the house calls. So the hand is playing it as a deck that they've maybe not played as much. We tend to share decks a bit, so I think we each have experience with each other's best WoW decks. But Zoc, do you have a preference on if I am the hand or the brain?
No.
JT, you have a preference?
I don't have a preference.
I personally like being the brain because I love watching other people play my decks. And this is even better because I don't even have to be the one playing WoW, but I can still like get some information about some of my decks. So it's kind of nice in that regard.
What Quick Draw means is that for the whole week after our Hand and Brain game playing together, he enjoys getting to heckle me for making really poor tactical decisions.
Also, that feels pretty good. Yeah.
I could be the hand, and then he can heckle me.
Oh, you guys could team up.
You want to break JT? Yeah, JT doesn't want the heckling. The only downside to this is that all of JT's decks are especially terrible to play against.
That's true.
I'll play. Actually, I've played it already on stream.
Okay.
But I have one in mind. It's not terrible.
We could do Random Access Archives.
What better way to showcase this beautiful invention that JT came up with?
Awesome.
All right, so I will do a Random Access Archives for my WoW. Do we want to have a SAS limit in there?
Yes. Maybe either of you have a preference, or someone from the chat can give us a min and max.
How spicy are you thinking tonight, Zoc?
I think we want to avoid Psy Vilavecchi's.
I was thinking more like low roll, like 60 to 70 or 60 to 65 even. Like
that puts my troopers in there.
Okay. Let's show us the way.
60 to 65 or 60 to
min 90, max 92.
Paginator's trolling.
Let's see, min 90. I think I only have one deck in this range.
What are you doing, 60 to 65?
60 to 65, we'll do it.
All right, Winds of Exchange. And then, Zoc, you're going to be the hand to my brain?
I'll do it.
Let's do it. All right. You've got a Vietnamese deck.
Sweet. You know, I just got some Vietnamese decks.
Did you? Did you get them from Emperor Riku?
I did.
Excellent.
I've only opened one.
I opened a whole box and I got a whirlpool from it.
Nice.
Actually, yeah. When I talked to Emperor Riku about it, I was like, if you can find a Vietnamese whirlpool deck for me, I will buy the Vietnamese whirlpool deck and I will buy a box off you. And so we worked it out. It's great. And I got a box from it, and I opened another Vietnamese whirlpool from the box. This is not one of those, though, unfortunately. I'm going to send the link to you. I can speak Italian, but I cannot speak Vietnamese, so I will not try. We can just call this one Tong.
So we need to do open hands. I guess JT will set it up. I'll just join.
Okay.
Yeah,
but I need to load your deck.
And then neither of us can have the stream up, obviously, so we won't see his hand. Did you get the link to the deck?
No. Where'd you send it?
I sent it in the
okay.
Zencaster
Yeah, I got
chat.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
I have a cool one.
I
Cool name,
I
anyway.
have not played this one, so like some of the advantage of the brain is gone because I have no idea what's going on here.
All right, I'm ready.
It does have a puzzling trinket though, which is fun.
You gonna set it up, JT?
I am. Game will be in beginner with uh, hands revealed, password sloppy. And I'm playing Desdemona
Oh,
Z Tussendator, the 66th. Okay,
we're gonna get sloppy.
we are
I'm playing
gonna get sloppy.
Tong Tran the Tom Te, and I don't know what it has.
All right, very
I
good.
don't speak Vietnamese, but I think you did pretty good there.
I don't think I did, but
Tong Tran de. Yeah, we'll have to
good
get
luck and have fun.
the pronunciation from Riku. Good luck and have fun indeed.
All
Explorer
right.
deck. I've heard from Tabletop Royale that that's good.
True, they did say that. I
Ooh.
I've opened a lot of explorers for a long time. I was pretty frustrated at how many explorers I had. Um, but yeah, let's see here. So I'm looking at your starting hand. I will get to make the mulligan decision for you. I think that's how it
Mm-hmm.
works, right, JT?
Brain mulligans. Yep.
Brain mulligans. Okay.
Double
Um,
membership drive, huh? Desdemona. Oh,
hmm.
Desdemona
need
Z
to fix my lighting.
Tussendator, the 66th. I always like
Seems like
the numbers and the names. Extra spicy.
I don't know if I love this hand, but um, I always struggle with the mulligan as a second player because it can always get worse. Um, I think I'm gonna keep it.
All right, I kept the hand.
All right, cool. I'm going to go Starlines and lead off with a card that I had very high hopes for when we initially started talking WoW and Starlines, which is Future Booster for efficiency. Mm-hmm.
Did you like the keep, Sock, or would you have thrown it back?
Let's see. Let me take a look at this deck. I think I would have kept it.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna go Star Alliance here.
We'll play out a teamwork, make it explorer. We're gonna rearrange JT's battle line
Ooh.
here. I think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn.
I'm glad that Tactical Officer Moon came back this set. I love that card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more relevant now than it was before, so it's a pretty cool one.
All right. Gonna go Sanctum here. Ooh, would have been really spicy if you had not made quite so many large deuters, but here we are.
We got some Grey Riders coming.
Got some Grey Riders coming indeed. Membership drive number 1, membership drive number 2.
Dang.
Not going to worry
Wow,
about those.
okay, I'm happy those are gone.
Yeah. Grey Rider number 1.
Oofta.
And do we want another fight with Grey Rider number 2? Nah, I think we just hang out there. Take a look with Future Booster, and we're leaving things on the top of the deck here.
Off to a fast start over there. Let's go with Starlines again.
I agree. We will start with Navigator Ollie. Take a look at our cards here. This seems like a brain decision, but he can't see these, so...
No.
Nope.
Every decision in turn will be the hand, except for the color of the key.
Oh, I'm not sure if that's a good decision. I should have looked more at my... Ooh. No, oh, well, whatever.
Did you just...
We'll then play Rogue Operation.
Okay. Didn't need C anyway.
And then we will fight here. And fight here.
That's fair. Very good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, I think it is Saurian for us. We're gonna make an Imperator Drusilla. Which is gonna destroy my damaged token. So sad. But I do now have some good fighting opportunities here.
Must have Symposium.
I do
He's
have
got a few in there.
Okay. 2 damage there, no exalt. 2 damage here, no exalt. Both of our failing strikes being used up. Symposium here gives us a reap with the token. And now we're going to get a fight with the Drusilla to finish off your board. And use the old future booster to check out what we got on top. Well, leave it still. Okay. Okay.
All right. We'll go Saurian this time.
All right. We'll play out a Praetor Marius. We will arm the plebeians over here. Play out a Faust. And we will play out the other Faust.
Wow.
I'm not sure if we should, but we did.
I was thinking of maybe playing the Faust on the other side of Praetor Marius, which I know goes against Praetor Marius, but it would at least...
Imperator, yeah. No, that's fair.
Oh dear, interesting. That is interesting. We'll go Star Alliance here. I don't know about this call. Could be not the best. We'll find out. All right, Operations Officer Ishii comes down to taunt Drusilla. And Scout Chief Courier on the other side. Oh, Nightcatcher, stay sloppy indeed. Comes down, makes a token. And we're going to put the old Echo Reflector on Drusilla too. Even though I'm probably going to be doing some fights. All right, to the bottom of that card it goes.
All right. You did check this time.
I am checking.
Tough call.
That is a little tough. I don't know if there's much that we can do. All right, let's go Equidon.
Interesting.
Yeah. You can just so you know, the criticism can go both ways. You can also be like, why would you call that house for me?
I will, but I'm going to save that for later.
Oh. Okay, well, I get to make a key.
Enjoy your key.
I get a key, indeed. And you have an Esquire. Don't love seeing that Esquire.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that card was in here. Whoa, that's cool.
It's a pretty cool one, right?
Is that in Woe?
No.
Okay.
Ah.
Now you know what I have, but
Interesting.
Now he knows. Yeah, if JT knows what we're talking about.
He's a smart guy.
How many legacies you got in there? It's got to be the FOF transponder.
7.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. But is there like a good... Huh. Okay. I unfortunately got to get rid of this Esquire before your mass bios come down. At least I kind of feel like I do. Yeah, we got to get rid of that Esquire, right? We can't leave that thing.
I like
my word is my bond, but also let us sign a contract.
I like that you read the flavor text. I never read the flavor text on any of these.
I only started doing that because I was doing like deck openings on my stream, and I was like, these flavor texts are really cool, actually.
I also was about to say that I liked your creature placement of putting the Esquire on the far end.
Yeah, I was trying to protect a little bit against Imperator.
The old Drusilla.
But it didn't really because he had Symposium.
The Symposium was good there, I think. I'll leave that one on the top. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. Well, he's got a bunch captured.
I do.
I think there's one right call. Quick draw.
All right. I see. It's probably what you wanted me to call last turn. I'll go Saurian here.
Ooh.
Is that what you wanted last turn as well?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I thought
so.
about it.
I think controlling their board is pretty important.
I had the feeling the pale was coming. Yeah. That legacy pale into significance, you know. There's the wipe clear. Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Getting rid of the echo reflector is a nice bonus.
Yeah, definitely. The game needs more upgrade control, right?
Yeah, I like it.
If I was a good player, I would already have this Martyr of the Vault on the table. Most likely. Most likely. All right, we'll muster up a token.
Whew, no grand melee.
No
Thank
grand
goodness.
melee.
And Grave Riders are gone.
Yeah. Put you over there. And I think we'll give you Taunt just for funsies. That's an interesting card that I think we'll leave on the top too.
Oh, wait, who gets to pick what color of the key?
Oh, I do. Yellow.
Is that true, JT?
It is unfortunately true.
Oh man.
Are you a red key believer?
I'm all over the place, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
I was playing my Kagi match with Algernon earlier today, and we actually had a red Baron.
I saw that.
It was
I saw that. Red, I was like,
and they still didn't go red.
No. Yeah, they still did not.
And
go
he
red.
he even reaped with his red Baron, but he could have played the red key. He could have forced a red key and got value out of it that turn.
Really?
Yes.
And he didn't.
Yes.
Oh, I missed
like
that.
Purposely.
So ingrained. It's so ingrained. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Actually, I forge a key here. I'm just gonna concede.
For the choice, yeah.
Let's see here.
Choices.
Yeah, this is the interesting choices here.
I think the flip side too is that I forged the red key first into the red baron on the next one. Womp womp.
I don't love this one, but I'm gonna go Equidon.
I see it. I was thinking about that too. We'll do it. Equidon. Equidon is that. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's rude. That's rude.
I think it had to be done. JT's been
I think
going
it
wide
did.
here.
I think it did.
Ugh.
It was a good call. That was a tough one.
It's a good burst. Get that Drusilla off the board. He's still not at a key.
Get rid of the Marta Vault before
Get rid
it
of the
could do
Martyr.
something.
Absolutely.
And it was like super taunted.
Yeah.
Super taunt.
Super taunt.
I was a little worried earlier when you used Rogue Operation for a mass buyout and a Crushing Charge. I was like, man, I don't know how much C this deck has, but thankfully it's got a good amount of C.
That's what I was talking about when I was like, ooh, I played the Ali and I sorted it that way, and I was like, ooh, is that a good idea?
It's turned out okay so far.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's not over yet. Does he have another Echo? Oh, he's got Rogue Operation. Nice.
Yeah. I have Rogue Operation, and I'm grunt working
Wow,
now.
he's only played 5 Starlights cards. Okay.
Yeah, to maximize it, but I guess I could gamble. Don't want to gamble. Not really. I just kind of want to steal 2. Okay. Making a token. Stealing 2.
Ooh, transporter platform. I like that.
Yeah, was deciding whether or not to save it, but ended up not. Clearly. And Specialist Guthrak will
Specialist
come down.
Guthrak. Oh my goodness.
That card, huh? Do I want that card? I'm drawing it anyway. Let's leave it on the top.
Okay, red or blue?
Man, now I have so much pressure to like pick the color that you want. I'll go blue.
All right.
This
is a really tough choice here.
Is it? Okay. Well, in that case, let me think on it longer. That will go Star Alliance here.
Usually Quick Draw says that, and I think it's tongue-in-cheek. And then I make what I think is the obvious choice, and he's like, what the heck are you doing? All right, Guthrak for Guthrak. Guthrak or Guthrak? Your own pyro.
Guthrak, I guess. See, Stronger Together. Why did I know I just spent like an hour complaining about how good cards are in the set, but why does this card have to be this bad?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, you can make it pop if you have a non-Star Alliance token and like all of the planets line up perfectly.
you had the chance earlier, Zoc, if I would have called Star to like use the Explorer twice. That's like the only time but it wasn't even a good choice just because of the situation. But why? I mean, if that card just said if
it would have been an okay choice, but I wouldn't have got much value out of it, right?
No, you would have had to put the pyro on it and reaped once and then fought, but you wouldn't have killed anything. So
exactly.
But why doesn't Stronger Together just say like if you have a Star Alliance creature with one neighbor that's different. Like, it would still not be like a
Yeah,
busted card,
yeah.
I don't think.
You ain't wrong. You ain't wrong. Let's go ask our friend Talon Scout with his Amber Pip. See what he has to say about that.
Saurian, huh?
Saurian indeed. Let's
Beware. Oh,
blast this guy from the middle here.
That hurts.
Yeah.
another Imperator. Yeah, get rid of that Guthrak. Oh, Defender. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that went that way this time. And let's take a look at our empty top. Flip it over.
All right, interesting now. I cannot see what's in your deck, so give me
It's
1
one
second.
Equidon, 2 Saurian, and 1 Star Alliance.
Okay, 2 Saurian. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not what I hoped, really.
Agreed.
Interesting.
Okay, let's go with Equidon.
I like it.
Okay, good. Whew, it's always so much pressure. I'm worried that the hand will not like my choice.
I know the feeling. Ooh, belligerent guard. Okay. I will take the card. That's cool.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I totally forgot what Imperator said. So if I kill another creature, then I'll have more creatures than you, and then they gain splash attack 4.
Yeah.
I can't allow that to happen.
That's fair. I should have probably doubled up on that flank instead of my right flank.
I was thinking about just reaping. Letting the Drusilla chill.
Yeah, my concern was they could just reap for check with their Star Alliance, or with their Saurian.
That's fair.
And yeah, I could capture with Guthrak, but
Or the trinket.
yeah, if I get a pip,
Yeah.
which isn't guaranteed.
Sure.
I should go to check, right? I'm very tempted to go Sanctum here.
You should not go to check.
I think I go to check.
Checking is overrated.
Always be check discarding? Alright, we'll capture one here.
Oh my goodness, you're using the Omni correctly?
I used the Omni correctly. It happened. take a screenshot.
What? Is that allowed?
Yeah. Oh, ooh, interesting.
Aquila Lone Hero is your hero? Grunt work.
I think we do it like that. Yeah, and just
another Echo Reflector.
So many, and I know what's on top.
You redrew it.
I'm gonna leave it. Okay.
I need to redraw mine.
Liking this, not hating this, not hating this right now.
He got the check.
Yeah, this is. Can you tell me what house is in your deck?
In my draw?
Yeah.
It is Saurian.
That's unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
Yeah. I think that means actually, wait, what is it? Okay. No, wait, what is it actually? Oh, yeah, all right. Um, dang, okay. Let's go with Star Alliance, I think.
All right. All right. Let me think about this a little bit. Hmm. Yeah, that was a good move. That was a good move.
I think it was the only option, right?
I wasn't talking about that, but
Oh, okay.
His own move was quick draw. Hypothetical ones. I like the visualization. Oh, pyro on belligerent guard. Cool. That's cool too. Oh, interesting. Hmm.
That was a good path. I actually the only thing
what do you think?
I think I would have fought with the Guthrak.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
just to clear the board.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good call. Yeah, I think you're right.
I like the pyro path. I would have put the pyro on the Guthrak, but I think you were right to put it on the belligerent guard.
I'm not sure if it would have mattered. Well, yeah, actually, it did matter
Using
to
the guard was a
to
good
get rid of
play.
the echo reflector. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about the belligerent guard. That was a good play. Um, so I do like that and giving
I
him
don't
the
think it would have
splash.
probably mattered anyway, looking at this, but oh snap. Defender Squire action. So yeah, it wouldn't have mattered either way.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Let's go with Star Alliance here.
Star Alliance? All right.
No, sorry, I don't know why I said that. I meant Saurian.
Okay.
You were probably like, "What is he talking about?"
He's like, so we're phoning it in, huh? It's like,
Yeah, so it's so we're done here, right? Someone wants to go to sleep.
Sorry, it doesn't really matter either.
It probably doesn't, but
okay. Okay. Legionary trainer is fun.
I could capture one. It doesn't really matter. I guess I'll draw.
yeah. I mean, I don't think you had enough
That didn't help.
outs. No, even if
Yeah,
you'd drawn the Faust, I don't think it would have
it
mattered.
wouldn't have mattered. I would have had to draw two Faust and more. With two Faust,
And
I
two
could have done it with
capture.
two Faust actually.
I think that would have only.
With the epic
Oh yeah,
poem.
you're right. You're right. Yeah,
Ooh.
but you only had one draw, so.
An epic poem. Yeah. Wow.
Good game.
Okay.
GG.
Good game.
Yeah, that's. You were able to really refresh the board, refill the board pretty regularly there, JT.
The board pressure, we were keeping it up. I mean, we never got to like 6 tokens, but there was a constant pressure of 2 to 3. at least every turn, plus my other house creatures. It felt like, so that's probably true.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
not just
Maybe not quite as much.
and to your point earlier, quick draw, I discarded 2 of my creature control cards, which could have been relevant.
I don't think it hurt you because like you had them when you needed them, and sure, like maybe like the mass buyout turn, you didn't get to play any of the cards. I feel like if you had not discarded them with Rogue Operation, you would have just ended up discarding them from hand. Because I think you
I would have
got
had like
value.
2 mass buyouts or something.
Something like that, yeah.
I kind of drew them all in a clump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you ended up getting value for them from the Rogue Operation. I think your play to kill the Esquire was wise because I was like, oh man, we could actually mass buyout with the Esquire out.
Yeah.
Would have been
Yeah.
really nice. That was coming, so you did well to kill the Esquire right away.
Interesting. I was out of Amber control, other than the Martyr with Nightapult. If you gave me a big, beefy body to fight into.
This is not a big Amber generator.
Yeah, it's not at all. 9 pips. A little below average probably, I'd say. But it's not great with the puzzling trinket. You know, like you didn't really have many choices to make with the puzzling trinket, it seemed.
Yeah, I mean, potentially I could have drew some at some points when I gained Ember instead. So maybe that was yeah, I don't know.
What's your point? Like, you know, this deck doesn't seem to make a lot of Amber, so it's hard to use those on draws instead. That might not even help you.
Yeah.
Interesting one. I don't know. It's fun. I honestly haven't played a ton with defenders. Not a ton with defenders, and I don't think I've gotten to play with like a Squire recruitment defender combo before. So that's cool. Yeah.
That is a cool combo. I feel like at some point, if there's enough well printed, that there will be a really cool Defender, Squire recruitment, membership drive, craziness deck.
Yeah, I have a pretty good Defender, double membership drive, double Sigil of Brotherhood deck. That can make some serious money.
So this one,
nice.
I mean, it's not bad. This one is double membership drive, the muster, and the Squire recruitment with a bunch of knights.
Yeah.
Is that a lie? Is that true? I got a lot of monks in there. A lot of monks.
You got a martyr. You got a Chow. Yeah, it looks like just martyr and Chow.
A couple of knights.
Yeah,
a couple of
kind of sad.
Kind of sad, but it is a thing. Double membership drive's fun. All right.
I guess my only hope for Epic Poem was getting Praetor Marius off, which didn't happen at all. But
no, it's pretty sad Epic Poem there.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to be very proactive on getting those Amber Pinatas off the board and not letting them linger.
Yeah.
This is a not tonight take. You're like, don't leave those hanging around. Yeah.
Totally.
Cool. Well, a fun one. I got our hand and brain in. I dig it. Yeah. We'll wrap it up there. Getting late on over here too. Hey, B-Hawk.
Thanks for staying super late.
No, super fun. Thanks for joining us tonight. Zoc. And yeah, thanks for the folks in the chat hanging out. I guess we will see you around the Sloppy Lab.
Thanks for letting me get sloppy.
Thanks, man. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah. You rock.